My name is Corina, and at 29 years old, I was finally getting married to the love of my life, Ronan. We wanted a small, intimate wedding, a heartfelt ceremony in a rustic barn with fairy lights, our closest friends, and a bluegrass band. It was supposed to be a reflection of us. But to my mother, Genevieve, and my older sister, Isolde, my wedding wasn't about me. It was their second chance to stage the society event of the year. They saw my simple plans as a personal insult, a stain on the family's reputation. They began a quiet, smiling coup, taking over every detail. The breaking point came when I discovered they had used the wedding fund my late grandmother left me to put a deposit on a lavish country club I despised. They thought I had no choice but to go along with it. They didn't know about the secret letter my grandmother had left with the money, a letter that was about to turn their perfect, Instagrammable wedding into a financial and social nightmare. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you how I took back my own wedding, hit like and subscribe to hear more true stories about family, boundaries, and the fight to be yourself. Before the chaos, my life was my own. I worked as a pediatric occupational therapist, a demanding but deeply rewarding job. I lived in a small rented house with a wild overground garden that was my pride and joy. My fiancé, Ronan, was a geologist, a calm, steady man who loved hiking and bad puns as much as I did. Our life together was built on shared values: authenticity over appearances, experiences over possessions. We were happy. My family, on the other hand, lived for appearances. My mother, Genevieve, was a former interior designer who treated her life like a showroom. Every piece of furniture, every social event was carefully curated to project an image of effortless elegance and wealth. My father, Walter, a retired architect, was a quieter presence, often swept along in my mother's social wake. Then there was my sister, Isolde. At 33, she was the family's golden child. She was beautiful, charming, and had married her college sweetheart in a wedding that was still talked about in my mother's social circles, a 300-guest affair at the city's most exclusive hotel. That marriage had ended in a messy public divorce 2 years ago, a fact my mother preferred to ignore. Since then, Isolde had moved back home, working a vague job in consulting, and spending most of her time maintaining her social media presence. I had always lived in Isolde's shadow. She was the one with the effortless grace, the one who was always the center of attention. I was the quiet, artistic one, the one who was considered dependable but not dazzling. When Ronan proposed to me during a meteor shower on a camping trip, with a ring that he had designed himself featuring a moss agate stone, I was over the moon. I couldn't wait to share the news. The reaction was underwhelming. We met them for dinner at their immaculate all-white house. A moss agate, my mother said, squinting at my hand as if it were a strange insect. How rustic. It's beautiful, Mom. It looks like a tiny forest, I replied. Isolde gave me a pitying smile. That's sweet, Corey. It's very you. She said the word you as if it were a synonym for quaint or unsophisticated. The conversation then turned to the wedding itself. We want to keep it small, Ronan explained, holding my hand under the table. Maybe 70 guests. We found a beautiful old barn venue about an hour outside the city. My mother actually laughed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. A barn? Corina, this isn't a high school hoedown. This is your wedding. It's a reflection on the family. You can't get married in a barn. We'll have it at the Greystone Country Club. But we don't want a country club wedding, I said, my stomach tightening. It's not our style. It will be everyone's style once they see it, she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. Your sister had a beautiful, proper wedding. We can't have people thinking we've fallen on hard times. The conversation was a preview of the months to come. Every idea I had was met with a condescending smile and a better suggestion. My vision of a food truck serving gourmet tacos was replaced with their insistence on a 5-course plated dinner. My desire for a simple bohemian-style dress was met with appointments at high-end bridal boutiques where they pushed me to try on $1,000 ball gowns. It was exhausting. The one thing we all agreed on was the source of the wedding funds. My grandmother, Matilda, a woman who had been the only one in the family to truly understand my quiet nature, had passed away 3 years prior. She had left me a specific inheritance, $50,000 set aside in a trust with the explicit instruction that it was to be used for my wedding day. It was an incredibly generous gift, one that brought me to tears when I first learned of it. It was also, I would soon discover, the weapon my mother and sister would use to try and force my hand. Since Grandma Matilda's money is paying for it, it's only right that we honor her, my mother would say, using my love for my grandmother as leverage. And she would have wanted a classic, elegant affair. The hijacking of my wedding went from subtle suggestions to a full-blown hostile takeover. One afternoon, I received a call from a well-known wedding planner. "Hello, Karina. Your mother, Genevieve, has just hired me to coordinate your special day. We are so thrilled. We have a preliminary consultation booked for tomorrow at the Greystone Country Club to view the ballroom." I was speechless. My mother hired you? Yes, she said it was a surprise. I called my mother, my voice trembling with anger. "Mom, you hired a wedding planner without asking me? And you booked a viewing at the country club?" "Darling, you're so busy with work," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "I'm just trying to help. You can't be expected to plan a proper wedding all by yourself. It takes a team." "My team is me and Ronan," I said through gritted teeth. "Don't be silly. Ronan is a lovely boy, but what does a geologist know about floral arrangements?" The arguments became a daily occurrence. Isolde was a constant presence, always siding with my mother. "Karina, Mom just wants what's best for you," she would say, flipping through a bridal magazine. "A barn wedding will look so cheap in the photos. Think of the memories." "I am thinking of the memories," I would reply. "I want memories that feel like us." The guest list was another battleground. My and Ronan's carefully curated list of 75 of our closest friends and family was dismissed as a starting point. My mother produced a list of over 250 people, a collection of her business associates, my father's old colleagues, and dozens of people I hadn't seen since I was a child. "We can't cut the Hendersons," she would gasp if I tried to remove a name. "It would be a social catastrophe." Ronan, bless his heart, tried to run interference. He would calmly explain our budget, our vision, our desires, but he was no match for the combined force of Genevieve and Isolde. They would smile at him, call him sweet, and then completely ignore everything he said the moment he left the room. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I received an email with the subject line, "Your wedding dress fitting confirmation." It was from a designer boutique I had explicitly told them I couldn't afford. The email confirmed a fitting for the custom-designed Isabel gown, which apparently had been ordered in my size. I called the boutique, my heart pounding. A very cheerful sales associate informed me that yes, a dress had been ordered for me, and yes, a non-refundable deposit of $5,000 had been paid. "The deposit was paid from the Matilda Vance Wedding Trust," the associate chirped. "Your mother handled all the paperwork." I felt the blood drain from my face. They had gone to the trustee, my Uncle Peter, who managed the account, and had somehow authorized a payment without my signature. I ended the call and sat in my car, unable to move. They had crossed a line. This wasn't just about hijacking my wedding anymore. This was about control, about disrespect, and it was theft. They had used my grandmother's legacy to fund their own fantasy, completely erasing me from the equation. When I confronted them that evening, they weren't even apologetic. They were triumphant. "We knew you'd love the dress once you saw it," Isolde said, pulling up a picture of a massive, jewel-encrusted meringue of a dress on her phone. "And the country club is booked," my mother announced, clapping her hands together. "June 12th, we paid the $20,000 deposit this morning, also from your grandmother's trust. See? Everything is getting done. You don't have to worry about a thing." I stared at them, a cold, hard knot forming in my stomach. They had spent half of my wedding fund on things I explicitly didn't want. "You used my money without my permission," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "We didn't want to bother you with the details, darling," my mother said with a dismissive wave. "It's all for you." That night, I told Ronan I couldn't do it anymore. "Let's just elope," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I can't fight them anymore. They won." He held me, his own frustration palpable. "Don't let them do this to you, Corey. Don't let them steal this from us." But I felt defeated. I had no power, no control. The wedding of my dreams had been replaced by a nightmare, funded by the person who would have wanted me to be happy. A few days later, still reeling from their betrayal, I retreated into the one thing that always brought me comfort: my grandmother's memory. I wanted to have a small memorial table at the wedding, a collection of photos of her and my grandfather. I knew my dad had a box of old family albums in the attic of their house. On a Saturday morning, I drove over, needing the quiet, dusty task to distract me from the anger that was simmering just below the surface. My parents were out for the day at a charity luncheon, so I had the house to myself. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten history. I spent hours sifting through old photographs, my heart aching with a mixture of nostalgia and grief. I found pictures of my grandmother as a young woman, vibrant and full of life. It was a potent reminder of the strong, independent woman she had been, a woman who would have been appalled by my mother's and sister's behavior. At the bottom of a large trunk filled with my grandmother's old linens, I found a small cedar box. It was not a jewelry box. It was simpler, more personal. I didn't remember ever seeing it before. Curiosity piqued. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled among dried flowers and a few faded postcards, was a thick, cream-colored envelope. My name was written on the front, in my grandmother's familiar, elegant script. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a letter, dated just a few months before she passed away. "My dearest Karina," the letter began. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone and you are hopefully planning the happiest day of your life. I have left you a gift, a fund for your wedding, but I have also left you a challenge. I know your mother and sister. I love them, but I am not blind to their ambitions. They will see your wedding not as a celebration of your love, but as a stage for their own social aspirations. They will try to shape it, to mold it, to make it theirs. Do not let them." I had to pause, my eyes blurring with tears. It was as if she were in the room with me, her voice a calm, steady presence. "The money I have left you is not just a gift, it is a tool. It is your power. I have set it up in a specific kind of trust. Your Uncle Peter manages it, but he is bound by the rules I have laid out. The funds can only be used for your wedding, and the final 50% can only be released to the vendors upon the submission of a signed, notarized affidavit from you, my dear Karina. In this affidavit, you must swear that the wedding being paid for is, in its major components, venue, guest list, and overall theme, a true and accurate reflection of your own wishes." I read the paragraph again, and then a third time. A slow, incredulous smile spread across my face. My grandmother, my wonderfully clever, perceptive grandmother, had seen this coming. She had built me a secret weapon. I have included a copy of the trust document for you. Your mother and sister know about the money, but they do not know about this specific condition. I instructed Pierre not to mention it unless you asked him about it directly. They will assume they can control the money because they believe they can control you. Prove them wrong, my love. Have the wedding of your dreams. Whether it's in a barn or a ballroom, make it a reflection of your own beautiful, authentic soul. Do not let them bully you into a performance. Your happiness is the only legacy I care about. With all my love, Grandma Matilda. Tucked behind the letter was a folded copy of the legal document. It was all there in dense legal language, just as she had described. My quiet, gentle grandmother had planted a legal bomb and had just handed me the detonator. I sat in the dusty attic, the letter clutched in my hand, and for the first time in months, I felt a surge of hope. The anger and helplessness began to recede, replaced by a cold, clear resolve. They had mistaken my quiet nature for weakness. They had mistaken my desire for peace as an invitation to be steamrolled. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I took the box with me. That afternoon, I called my Uncle Peter. Uncle Peter, it's Karina. I need to ask you about the specific terms of Grandma Matilda's wedding trust. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. I was wondering when you might call, he said, a note of relief in his voice. Your grandmother was a very smart woman. Yes, let's talk. He confirmed everything. The affidavit, the conditions, all of it. He also confirmed, with deep regret, that my mother had pressured him to release the funds for the deposits, assuring me that she had my full consent. She can be very persuasive, he said apologetically. I should have called you to verify. I am truly sorry, Karina. It's not your fault, I assured him. But I am going to need you to do something for me. I need you to cancel any further payments from that trust until you receive direct, written authorization from me. Consider it done, he said. The first chess piece had been moved. Now it was time to call the meeting that would change everything. I called my mother that evening, my voice a carefully crafted instrument of calm. Mom, Ronan and I have had some time to think, and we'd like to have a final planning meeting, I said. We want everyone on the same page. Can you, Dad, and Isolde come over tomorrow night? Of course, darling, she replied, her voice bright with the assumption that I had finally surrendered. I'll bring the swatches for the linens at the club. Isolde has some wonderful ideas for the centerpieces. Great, I said. See you at 7. The next 24 hours were a blur of focused preparation. I met with a notary public to have a blank affidavit form drawn up, its language mirroring the requirements of the trust. I made copies of my grandmother's letter and the relevant pages of the trust document. I called the barn venue we had originally wanted, and by some miracle, they had a last-minute cancellation for a date in late September. I put a hold on it with my own credit card. When Ronan came home from work, I walked him through the plan. He listened, a slow, amazed smile spreading across his face. Your grandmother was a legend, he said, pulling me into a hug. Are you ready for this? I'm terrified, I admitted, but I'm also more ready than I have ever been for anything in my life. They arrived at precisely 7 o'clock, bustling into my small house like a conquering army. My mother carried a binder the size of a small suitcase, and Isolde had iPad queued up with a slideshow of floral arrangements. My father followed, looking, as usual, like a weary but resigned foot soldier. We have so much to show you, my mother announced, spreading her binder open on my dining room table. We've narrowed down the caterers, and Isolde found the most divine string quartet. They launched into a breathless presentation of their wedding. The country club, the 5-course meal, the ice sculpture in the shape of a swan. I let them talk for a full 15 minutes, nodding occasionally, my face a mask of neutral interest. Ronan sat beside me, his hand a warm, steady presence on my knee. Finally, when there was a pause for breath, I spoke. "It all looks very thorough," I said. "It's going to be the wedding of the year," Isolde declared. "There's just one small problem," I said, my voice dropping the pretense of compliance. They all looked at me, their smiles faltering. "What problem?" my mother asked, her tone sharpening. "The problem is that none of this is what I want, and the problem is that you used $25,000 of my money without my permission to pay for it." My mother scoffed. "Karina, don't be dramatic. It's your wedding fund. We used it for your wedding." "Actually, you used it for a wedding, not my wedding, and that, as it turns out, makes all the difference." I slid a copy of my grandmother's letter across the table to my mother. She picked it up, her brow furrowing in confusion. I watched her face as she read, the color draining from it sentence by sentence. Isolde read over her shoulder, her perfectly made-up face collapsing into a mask of disbelief. My father, seeing their reactions, picked up his own copy. "What is this?" Isolde whispered, her voice shaking. "That," I said, "is Grandma Matilda's insurance policy against you." I then passed them the copy of the trust document, with the section about the affidavit highlighted in yellow. "It seems my grandmother knew you both better than I did. She anticipated this. She knew you would try to steamroll me, so she put in a safeguard. The remaining $25,000, the money you need to pay the final balance on all of these deposits that you've made, cannot be released without a notarized statement from me swearing that this wedding is the one I wanted." My mother stared at the document, then at me, her eyes wide with dawning horror. "You wouldn't," she breathed. "Oh, I would," I said, leaning forward. "I will not sign a fraudulent document. I will not perjure myself. I will not stand up in front of my friends and family and participate in a lie that you have orchestrated." "So, what are you saying?" my father asked, his voice grave. He understood the implications. He had been a lawyer after all. "I am saying we have two options," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Option 1 is you cancel every single contract you made without my consent. You will forfeit the $25,000 in deposits. That money is gone. It will be the price of the lesson you have just learned about respecting my boundaries. Then we will use the remaining $25,000 to plan the wedding Ronan and I actually want, the small 75-guest wedding at the barn in September." "And option 2? Isolde asked, her voice barely audible. "Option 2 is that you refuse. You stick to this fantasy wedding you've planned. I refuse to sign the affidavit. The trust does not release the final payments. You will be on the hook, personally, for the hundreds of thousands of dollars in cancellation fees and remaining balances. And Ronan and I will take a trip to City Hall, get married, and use the remaining $25,000 as a down payment on a house. The choice is yours." The silence in the room was so thick I could feel it pressing in on me. My mother stared at me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. Isolde looked like she was about to be physically ill. My father just looked at the documents, then at me, with a strange, unreadable expression. "This is blackmail," my mother finally hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "No," I said calmly. "Blackmail is when you use a secret to extort something. I'm just enforcing the terms of a legal document that you failed to read. This is a consequence." "You would let $25,000 of your grandmother's money go to waste out of pure spite?" Isolde cried, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "I see it as an investment in my future happiness," I replied. "A small price to pay to be rid of your constant interference." My mother stood up so abruptly her chair scraped against the floor. After everything I've done for you, all the hours I have put into planning this, I have been working tirelessly to give you the wedding you deserve, a wedding that reflects our family's standing. You were planning a wedding to fix the social damage from Isolde's divorce, I stated, the truth of it hitting me even as I said it. You are using my wedding as a do-over, a way to show everyone that our family is still perfect. This was never about me. It was always about you and her. Isolde burst into tears. That's a horrible thing to say, she sobbed. Is it untrue? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. She just continued to cry, a performance I had seen many times before. My father, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. He looked at my mother. Genevieve, she's right, he said, his voice heavy with resignation. We pushed too hard. We took over. We need to cancel the club. Walter, don't you dare side with her, she shrieked, turning on him. I am not siding with anyone, he said, his voice gaining a firmness I hadn't heard in years. I am looking at a legal document. Matilda was very clear. We have no choice. We have to cancel. And lose all that money? Lose face with all of our friends whom I have already told to save the date? I will not be humiliated like this. She turned back to me, her eyes pleading, now that anger hadn't worked. Karina, please, don't do this to me. Don't do this to your sister. We can compromise. We can have the wedding at the club, but make it smaller. No, I said, the words solid and unmovable. The time for compromise is over. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. You have 24 hours to decide. Cancel the contracts, or Ronan and I are going to the courthouse. I stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. Ronan stood with me, a silent, solid wall of support at my side. I think you all should go now, I said. My mother and Isolde stormed out without another word, a whirlwind of furious tears and slammed doors. My father lingered for a moment at the door. Your grandmother would be proud of you, he said quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. You have more of her in you than I ever realized. Then he turned and followed them, leaving Ronan and I alone in the quiet of my small house. I collapsed onto the sofa, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me trembling and exhausted. You did it, Ronan whispered, pulling me into his arms. I did it, I said, the reality of it finally sinking in. I had stood up to them. I had taken back my life. The next morning, I got a one-word text from my mother. Fine. It was followed by a slew of angry emails from wedding vendors confirming the cancellation of their services. The country club, the planner, the string quartet, the ridiculously expensive dress, all of it gone. The $25,000 in deposits was lost, a costly lesson for my mother and sister. They refused to speak to me for weeks. The silence was a gift. Freed from their influence, Ronan and I planned our wedding in 3 short months. It was everything we had dreamed of. We were married on a crisp September afternoon at the beautiful old barn, surrounded by 70 of our closest friends and family. My father walked me down the aisle, his eyes shining with a pride that felt, for the first time, truly for me. My mother and Isolde did not attend. Their absence was a quiet statement of their disapproval, but instead of hurting, it felt like a final, necessary boundary being drawn. Our wedding was perfect. We said our vows under an arch of sunflowers, we ate gourmet tacos from a food truck, and we danced the night away to a lively bluegrass band under a canopy of fairy lights. It was a day filled with laughter, joy, and the kind of authentic love that doesn't need a country club to prove its worth. It was a day that was completely and utterly ours. A year has passed since our wedding, and the landscape of my family has irrevocably changed. Ronan and I are happier than ever.
We used the remaining $25,000 from my grandmother's trust, plus our own savings, as a down payment on a small house with a big garden, just as we had dreamed. The memory of our wedding is a source of pure, unadulterated joy, a perfect start to our life together. My relationship with my father has transformed. In the absence of my mother's and sister's constant social maneuvering, he and I have found a new way to connect. He comes over for dinner every few weeks. He helps Ronan with projects around the house. He is a quiet but constant presence in our lives, and I feel like I am finally getting to know the man who was there all along, buried under the weight of my mother's expectations. My mother and Isolde have had a more difficult year. Losing the deposits was a significant financial blow, but the social fallout for them was even worse. Having to explain to their friends that the wedding of the year was canceled was a humiliation my mother still hasn't quite recovered from. For a long time, they maintained a stony silence towards me, but recently there have been tentative olive branches. My mother sent a simple, unadorned birthday card. Isolde sent a text message with a picture of a dog she had just adopted, a small sign of her building a life of her own. I don't know if our relationship will ever be what it once was. In many ways, I hope it isn't. The old dynamic was one of imbalance and disrespect. What comes next, if anything, will have to be built on a new foundation of honesty and mutual respect. It's a slow process, and I am not pushing it. My happiness no longer depends on their approval. The greatest gift my grandmother gave me wasn't the money. It was the permission to be myself. Her letter was a lifeline, a reminder that I had a right to my own life, my own choices, my own happiness. She taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to teach them where your boundaries are. It's a painful lesson, but a necessary one. I had spent my life trying to be the good daughter, the one who kept the peace. But true peace, I've learned, doesn't come from appeasement. It comes from authenticity. It comes from having the courage to say, this is who I am, and this is what I want, and knowing that you are worthy of it, whether they approve or not. Have you ever had to fight for your own vision against the expectations of your family? What did you learn from the experience? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life stories about creating the life you truly want. Remember that your happiness is not a negotiation. It is your birthright. Thank you for listening.